Picture the mid-1990s, the heavy metal landscape was undergoing a massive shift. Thrash metal, the titan of the 80s, was widely considered dead. Traditional death metal had reached a point of oversaturation, and grunge was dominating the airwaves. The extreme metal scene was desperate for innovation. Then, in 1995, a band from Gothenburg, Sweden, released an album that didn't just push the boundaries, it redefined them. That band was At the Gates. The album was Slaughter of the Soul. It was a lean, focused 34-minute masterclass in aggression and melody that would become the blueprint for a new subgenre. But then, at the absolute height of their power, and just as the world was starting to take notice, they did the unthinkable. They disappeared. Today, we're diving into the history of At the Gates, the making of their magnum opus, and how their brief disappearance helped turn them into one of the most influential bands in metal history. To understand Slaughter of the Soul, you have to understand where it came from. The origins of what we now call melodic death metal or melodeath are centered in Gothenburg, Sweden. This wasn't some massive corporate movement. It was a tiny, tight-knit community of friends who all shared the same bus route into the city. Mikael Stan of Dark Tranquillity recalled that they would all meet up, members of At the Gates, In Flames, and Dark Tranquillity, on that single bus line. Then sit in the park with a tape recorder and tons of beer. Out of this local camaraderie, the Gothenburg Big Three were born. In Flames, the Jester Race, Dark Tranquillities, The Gallery, and At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul. While traditional death metal often focused on gruesome violence and atonality, these Gothenburg bands began experimenting with leading melodies, conventional riffing, and pensive lyrics. Melodic death metal is defined by combining the high-pitched growls and distorted guitars of death metal with the harmonized guitar riffs and solos of the new wave of British heavy metal. At the Gates in particular blended the ferocity of the underground with that precision that was previously unheard of. At the Gates didn't start at the top. The first three albums, The Red in the Sky Is Ours from 1992, With Fear I Kiss the Burning Darkness from 1993, and Terminal Spirit Disease from 1994, were experimental and darker. According to vocalist Thomas "Tompa" Lindberg, the reception to Terminal Spirit Disease wasn't what the band had hoped for. They knew they had to bring their A game for the next record. When they entered the studio in 1995, they weren't trying to invent a genre. They just wanted to write the best death metal songs possible by incorporating classic songwriting into their sound. The recording process was grueling. Producer Fredrik Nordström pushed the band to their absolute physical limits. Drummer Adrian Erlinson was told he needed to raise his stick to his shoulder on every snare stroke. The intensity was so high, it reportedly resulted in exhaustion and even a nosebleed after more than 80 takes of a single performance. The result of this obsession with precision was an album that sounded mechanical in its tightness. Nowhere is this more evident by the opening track, Blinded by Fear. Ironically, this song, now considered one of the most influential melodeath tracks ever written, was the last one written for the album. The band felt they were missing a classic opener to lure the listener in. The track begins with a unique mechanized industrial intro reflecting the band's desire for a cold, precise feel. When the riffs finally kick in, they are razor sharp, supported by what fans call a chunk beat, a feel that appeals to fans both of 80s thrash and death metal. Thomas Lindberg's vocals on this record were also a breed apart. Unlike the deep Cookie Monster growls that traditional death metal had, Lindberg utilized a savage, high-pitched howl that was decipherable enough for fans to understand his pensive, tortured lyrics. He was 22 years old at the time and frustrated with the world, and that raw emotion was captured perfectly in the booth. Beyond the iconic opening track, Blinded by Fear, Slaughter of the Soul had more classic songs that helped define the Gothenburg sound. Cold is frequently cited for its furious speed and surprising emotional depth. It's particularly famous for the legendary guest solo performed by Andy LaRocque. Suicide Nation, similar to Cold, The song is noted for delivering furious speed combined with a layer of emotional depth that would set it apart from traditional death metal. Flora of the Soul, or the title track, is known for its groove-based, almost bluesy guitar sections, reminiscent of a style found on Entombed's Wolverine Blues. It's also a staple of the band's live performances, featuring an iconic moment where the entire crowd screams the word "go" at the start of the song. So here's a clip of that. Go! Flora of the Soul was released in November 1995 to instant acclaim and a Swedish Grammy nomination. International tours followed, and the band found themselves in the rotation on MTV's Headbangers Ball. At the Gates had officially broken through. And then in 1996, they abruptly split up. The song Breakup added a layer of mythos to the album. It was a brilliant burst of lightning in a bottle with no follow-up for years. Just as they had defined the Gothenburg sound, they left the scene entirely, leaving a massive vacuum that was quickly filled by a generation of imitators. While the band was gone, the influence only grew. By the early 2000s, Flora of the Soul had become the primary inspiration for the American metalcore movement. Bands like Killswitch Engage, As I Lay Dying, and All That Remains borrowed the harmonized riffs and vocal styles of At the Gates so heavily that the phrase "At the Gates Worship" became a common descriptor in metal circles. The album's accessibility, its verse-chorus structures, and melodic hooks allowed death metal sounds to reach a wider audience than ever before. It was a gateway album that proved it can be brutal and catchy at the same time. Even though the band members have moved on to other projects like The Haunted, their legacy was being cemented by thousands of kids in America who were trying to replicate that specific 1995 Gothenburg sound. After a long silence, At the Gates finally returned to the stage in 2008. Thomas Lindberg noted that seeing their music resonate with fans after being gone for so long was a feeling like no other, specifically recalling a show in New York where the crowd screamed the word "go" at the start of Blinded by Fear so loudly it drowned out the band. They eventually realized that the chemistry was still there, leading to their comeback album, 2014's At War with Reality. They continued to tour and release music, finally finding a way to balance their legacy with a more mature, grounded, emotional approach to songwriting. However, the story of At the Gates reached a tragic conclusion recently. In September 2025, the metal world was devastated by the death of iconic frontman Thomas "Tomba" Lindberg after a battle with cancer. He was the voice behind the timeless classic that was Flora of the Soul, and he passed away just as the album was approaching its 30th anniversary. But even in his final days, Lindberg was focused on his artistic vision. Before his passing, the band had been working on what would become their 8th and final studio album, The Ghost of a Future Dead. This album will be released on 24th April 2026 as a tribute to Lindberg, and you can expect a full review on this channel. Musically, the final album is a return to the roots, featuring the razor-edge riffs and soaring melancholic melodies that define the mellow death metal in the first place. And I'll talk more about that when I do my full review. At the Gates are the quintessential example of quality over quantity. They helped invent a genre, released a masterpiece that changed the course of heavy music, and then stepped back to let their influence ferment for over a decade. From the beer-soaked parks of Gothenburg to the main stages of international festivals, their impact is massive. Slaughter of the Soul isn't just a classic album, it's a touchstone for an entire generation of metalheads. Thomas Lindberg may be gone, but as his final lyrics suggest, his work remains a bridge between the past and the future of metal. At the Gates may be gone, but never forgotten. Check out my review of the most recent At the Gates album review. It should be appearing on your screen right now. Meanwhile, thanks for watching. Please like this video. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.